Welcome back. Well, I have a really interesting and useful project today, although it's a short and simple one. When I was at Lutz Antiques yesterday, and you're getting old when you don't even know what day of the week it is, I got myself a birthday present. Now, my birthday is not coming up for another 6 or 7 weeks, but every year I get myself a birthday present. It's nice to be able to have at least one birthday present that you're not tempted to take back to the store or regift to somebody else. And that's what I do. And this year, I found it at Lutz. So, when we come back, I will show you the birthday present, and we are going to talk about dealing with damaged paper. Okay, so I'm not going to keep you in suspense. Let me show you my birthday present. My birthday comes up at the end of next month, and every year I buy myself a birthday present. So at least I know there's going to be one thing I really like. Take a look at this beauty. Here we go. $95. And it is a portable sewing machine. This little case in the back is what drops on the top. You can see where it locks in on the sides. It's electric. Here's the pedal. And I can't tell you when the last time was that I saw a pedal that looked like that. This is fantastic. It works. All of the various foots and so on are in this little cubby, along with a somewhat tattered, but all original user's manual. Now, this is coming home with me, and the first thing I'm going to do, and I cannot stress this to you strongly enough, if you come across something like this, and let me show you this manual. Here we go. As you can see, tattered, fragile. The first thing I am going to do is scan this. And then this is going in a bag to be put away somewhere so that I will never have to open it again. I will be able to use the scanned copy. If you have old paper and you actually need to use it, in this case, it's the user's manual for the sewing machine, I am going to have to use it. Scan it. If you don't have a scanner yourself, take it to Staples or Kinko's or whoever does printing in your area and have them scan it. But don't risk further damage to the original. So, I am thrilled. Happy birthday to me. Well, this is a wonderful old electric sewing machine. I have not been able to find information on this particular model yet, but I've just barely started looking. Based on the cord and the cord configuration, I'm guessing the machine is post-World War II, but kind of just barely. So I would say the tentative date I'm going to put on it is around 1948. It's probably pre-1950 because it still had all of the elaborate decoration of the earlier sewing machines, the old pedal-operated, foot pedal-operated machines from the turn of the century, but it was electrified. It works. So, this is what we are in for a while, the reclamation of the sewing machine projects. Now, I don't have to fix the machine because it operates, but I do have to deal with that manual. So, let me show you. This is the manual now. And I'm going to show you how we got from that folded mess to something that is suitable for scanning, because that, in fact, is my goal, to get this manual scanned. So, let me just take you over to the ironing board and show you, because yes, we are ironing our little manual. So let me show you how we got from that scrunched up mess to these nice flat pages. Okay, so here is the manual unfolded. Now, as you can see, it's in rough shape. Some pages are a lot worse than others. This one in particular is fairly ragged. And as we get a little further back, the pages are joined right up in here. It's a very small area where they are joined. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut through that. Don't tear, cut. The reason I'm going to cut through that is, as you can see, with this very small bit of joining, if somebody eventually starts handling this manual, there's a very good chance they will tear it and do further damage. So I think it would be a lot better if they only had to cope with one page at a time. Now, I'm doing this on the ironing board. And there's a reason for this. And that's because this is what I'm using to straighten out these little creases. Here. There. Now, I'm going to stop for a moment while I do this, because I'm going to need both hands to hold these bits of paper open while I iron it. And I'll show you what it looks like when I've got a couple of pages done. Okay, now we've got a couple of pages that are fairly well flattened out. And notice, this one is curling. They will curl. If it curls, just pop it over on the other side and iron it from the back. And that should take out the curling. Now, what I want to do is get this flat enough to scan. And in areas like this, where there are little tears, I want to fold the paper back into place. You know, a piece like this, a word or two might actually be folded back on itself. So I want something scannable. That's my goal. This is probably the worst of the pages. In other words, this one is in much sorrier condition than the rest. So, with this page, it has a parts list here. Fortunately, even though a lot of it is missing, I can probably infer the parts list. This is the tension information, and very lucky, this is actually, even though it's 2 pages, it's only a page and a half of information, so the loss is not too great. Okay, so here is my flattened out, ironed, and scannable manual. And before I forget, I should mention that the first thing I did before I did anything else is I dumped all the water out of my iron. Now it's a steam iron, as virtually all of them are, but I emptied the water reservoir completely. Then I flipped the iron over to the steam setting and let it heat up. And that was to evaporate out any residual water that might have remained, because the one thing you don't want to do is accidentally get your paper wet. Now, from here, it goes to the scanner, and that's all computer stuff, so we can talk about that. Now, what I should have said at the very beginning was do this with a dry iron. And I did eventually remember to tell you that. I took the iron right over to the bathroom sink and poured all of the water out of the reservoir, and I actually shook it up and down to see if I could get all the drops out. Oh, excuse me for this. Audie is sitting right next to me, and he was in my lap. So, of course, I got cat hair all over me. Don't I? But I love you, and we'll put up with it because you're a good boy. I had to dump all of the water out, shake it, and then I turned the iron on, flipped it onto the steam setting to encourage the water to go out to the hot parts. Boy, that's so technical, isn't it? The water in the iron, as the iron heats up, the water goes out to the ironing surface, that sort of metal plate. And this will evaporate any leftover water. You want to do this with a dry iron. You want your iron to be hot enough to do the job, but not so hot that it scorches the paper. For me, with my iron, which is a modern iron, and they don't get as hot as the old ones, it was just turn it up full, and then just make sure I didn't leave it on the paper and walk away and get a cup of coffee. That's usually enough to prevent scorching. So let's talk about some things you don't want to do. Now you notice there are little holes in my, let me grab you one of the bad ones. Okay, let's see where we are. This one looks pretty bad. I think this is the worst. Okay, as you can see, this is in very sorry shape. And it might be very tempting to just lay this out flat and run a piece of Scotch tape across that in order to hold those pieces together. That is like number one on the no-no list. What will happen over time is the adhesive will eat into the paper, it will yellow the paper, and I'm sure we've all seen it, old pieces of paper that have tape marks on it. You can see the outline of the tape, and it's usually in a yellow or orange color, and the tape has long since degraded and fallen away. Do not tape your paper. If you have to do anything like that, there are special adhesives, and it's just like a wheat paste adhesive. You can just get the wheat paste, mix it up yourself, no great trick to it, and then there are special archival papers you can use. So there are ways to do it, but on a project like this, no. Tape is your enemy. So what I will do with that, oh, and by the way, if that piece had been fully ripped apart, I still wouldn't tape it. I would just lay the two halves together on the scanner bed, because that is the next step, and then scan it. So let's talk about the scanning process, because that's something I'm going to do on the computer. My printer is an all-in-one printer fax scanner. I'm trying to think of how one faxes. Actually, I do have a phone line running through the computer, but most people don't anymore. So I'm not really sure how they do that unless they have a VoIP, that's Voice over Internet Protocol account set up somewhere. I'm not sure how that works. I've never used the fax function, but I use the scanner function all the time. Now, my printer, I get them at Walmart. They are very inexpensive. You can get these all-in-one printers for as little as $25. No kidding. I just checked the Walmart online site, and even though they're out of stock on the $25 printers, it's still listed in their inventory. All right, you can come over. Okay. So, presumably, once they go back in stock, you'll be able to get them. I get my printers so inexpensively that I swear this is the truth. I have bought a whole new printer in the past because it was cheaper to buy the new printer and use those ink cartridges than buy new replacement ink cartridges. That's how cheap they are. That's how far the technology has come. So, if you get a printer, if you're looking at a printer, if it's in your future, get one that has a scanner component, because believe me, you'll find more uses for it than you can imagine. In this case, when I scan, I am going to scan every page separately, front, back, so on and so forth, and I believe this is about a dozen pages, so that will be 24 page size sides. What I will do is, with each scan, I will begin numbering it 0, 1, 0, 2, etc. Don't forget that 0, because when you put this in a folder, your computer is going to organize it alphanumerically. So if you don't put in 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3, what's going to happen is your pages are going to go from 1 to 10 to 11, etc. So, and that you don't want. It'll make things difficult to find. So start your numbering with 0, 0, 1, 0, 2. By the way, if you have more than 100 pages, use 2 zeros. In this case, it would be unnecessary because there are so few pages. Then I am going to read through that scanned page and title it. So, say page 04 is going to be threading the bobbin. So I will put bobbin, thread, and perhaps it will even be tension. That's how I will label it. The key words for the information contained on that page. The reason for this is the computer can search the folder for me, and if I want information on how to thread my bobbin, I just put bobbin into the search engine, and bang, up comes the bobbin page. If I want to know how to thread my bobbin, I put thread. Up comes the thread bobbin page. Now also, threading the needle is going to come up on that, etc. But it's an easy way to find your documents. So this will allow me to search 2 ways. One is page 1, page 2, page 3, and the other is by topic. And this batch of fragile old papers is going to go into a plastic bag. I'm going to throw in a little packet of silica gel. They come in everything. I don't know about you, but I save them. I throw them in a jar. If I go out and buy a shoebox at Michael's, it has a packet of silica gel in it. Silica gel absorbs moisture. Moisture is the great enemy of old paper. It'll go into a bag It will just get filed away somewhere. And then when I need to use the manual, I have the scan. And that does a number of things. One, it means I will not have to handle those delicate, fragile pages. Two, here, let me show you this. Do you see the size of that print? Okay. Now imagine what it's like if you prefer Braille, as I do. You gotta know I can't read that. There is like no possibility. Once it's scanned and it's on the computer, I don't need to use any special software designed for the visually impaired. I can use the same software everybody else has on their computer and just enlarge it. Super simple. I can even run this through one of the Adobe Acrobat programs, and these are readily available to everyone. And what that will do is identify words and allow me to fill in blanks. Now, I'm not going to do that, but if you deal a lot in heavily damaged old paper, that's a program you might want to get comfortable with because it's incredibly useful. So when the smoke clears on all of this, I'm going to have this on my computer. And, that's terrific because, as I say, I can enlarge that as large as I need to be able to read it, to use the manual. But also, when I say on my computer, I'm sort of fudging a little. The actual file is going to be located on a separate backup drive. And again, if you don't have it, this is something that's more expensive. I will warn you about that. If you don't have a separate backup drive, consider getting one. Because over the years, I can't tell you how many files I have had to recreate because a computer crashed and I was not able to retrieve the working files on that computer. So that's what got me into backup drives in the first place. They're small, they're not much larger than a cell phone. And these days they hold terabytes of data, which means you can put 700 or 800 feature-length films on your backup drive. You can put all of your print files on the drive. And these drives, I'm not going to say they don't fail, but they are designed for durability, and I have never had a backup drive fail on me yet, and I'm still using a backup drive. In fact, I keep copies of my YouTube videos. Now, I don't need to because YouTube has them, but if anything ever happens to YouTube, I've got all my old videos on a backup drive. That backup drive that I am using is 15 years old. It hasn't failed, still working fine. So the technology is proven and it's sound. That's just a little piece of computer advice. So that is going to deal with the manual. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with sewing machines, you probably don't care about this very much, but this is information that you can transfer over to any old appliance. If you have a manual, the manual not only tells you how to maintain your old appliance, in this case, that's going to tell me how to oil my sewing machine. It's going to tell me where all the parts are, so that if the sewing machine stops working, now remember, this is very old, and if something goes wrong, I'm probably going to have to fix it myself, so I need that manual. Something goes wrong, it's going to help me isolate the problem, and it's also going to help me identify parts. And with any old appliance, being able to identify your part, I want part number 4974, in this case, a Stag electric sewing machine mid-40s. That's information you can take to the internet and locate a part. That's information you can take to whoever deals with vintage sewing machine parts, and there are people out there who do. You can give them that information. In this case, because that is older than, well, good Lord, it's older than I am, so that means it's pretty darn old. It's old enough so that it's not using bobbins. I'm saying bobbin using the word loosely. It uses a shuttle system, which is like a bobbin with a very long shaft and little teeny tiny ends. So it looks like a bobbin you're holding up to a funhouse mirror. It's different. I need to be able to cope with this. Now, this is true anytime you get anything that's old and has working parts. Get an old stove, get an old refrigerator, etc. Ezra, my stove, and I've mentioned this in the past, because I know the make and model of the stove, I was able to find an ad, not for this exact model, but for a similar model, from a Sears catalog, 1933, I think. It was either 33 or 34. That's how old Ezra is. And because they showed a cutaway diagram, I have all of the parts laid out for me. You can't put a price on that when you have an old piece. Something breaks, you look at that cutaway diagram, you look at your broken piece, all you have to do is say, what's wrong with this picture? Very easy. For more complex pieces like old refrigerators, old washing machines, even if you're not going to do the repair yourself, having the information from the manual gives you something you can take to the appliance repair person and say, here, this is the manual, and they can sort it out from there. And most good appliance repair people will be able to. So, I consider it very valuable to have the original manual. And by the way, nowhere in all of this tells you how old it is. Nowhere in all of this does it even list the manufacturer of that sewing machine. It is so old that advertising wasn't even really a thing, if you can believe that. Wow. So, yeah. All right. As time goes on, we are going to look at how to deal with the lock, because the sewing machine has a lock, but I don't have a key. So I need to address that. And I have already ordered the parts I need for that. We are going to work on lock replacement. We are going to look at organizing things like the presser foot cache. They have more presser foots than I have ever seen. But it's also going to give us a chance to take on some sewing projects, because although I have a modern sewing machine, I hate it. I have not liked a single sewing machine I have had since 1964. And even then, that was not a 1964 machine. It was a machine from the 1950s. And my mother insisted, as I was sewing more as a child, my mother insisted on buying a new machine. And I was tempted to spit on it. I hated the new machine, and I have hated every new machine since. So now I have a machine that I understand, that is pretty, and I like it. So that means we can do sewing projects, because obviously I don't want you to have to sit here and watch a video of me spitting and cursing at a sewing machine. All right, so that is it for this little project. just how to deal with old paper. And I will see you all on Thursday when we do Just Chatting, and I will not see you the following Friday. I'm afraid I'm going to have to drop the Friday morning videos out of our lineup because I am currently doing 4 videos a week. And remember, I said this at the beginning of COVID, that over time we would go back to our normal weekend schedule. Well, I know we're not all out of the woods yet, but I'm still doing 3 videos a week, but only 2 of them are going to be on the weekends. So henceforth, it's going to be a Saturday morning, Sunday morning, and then the Thursday evening. And I'm keeping the Just Chatting videos because those are our fun videos. And frankly, those are the most popular videos I'm doing right now, which means those are the ones that are, well, doing what they're supposed to do, which is acting as outreach, especially to our more isolated and vulnerable viewers. And those are the folks that we have to prioritize. Those are the folks who need our time and attention, because many people are still alone, they're still in isolation. A lot of people did not come out of 2020 anywhere near as well as they went into it. So that's what's going on. I will see you all next week. Meantime, have a terrific day, and we'll do a little slideshow on the way out.